Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to my Wild Rift tier list for patch 3.2a. There was a few changes with some champions this patch. I've kind of moved around my tier list a little bit, but as always, I'm going to go through every single role in the game and tell you all my thoughts about the champions, why they're in the positions they are, and where I think that some champions might move up and down. Obviously, this is all my opinion. This is on the website that I work with the guys from Mobifier, Wild Rift Fire. If you guys haven't checked it out already, make sure you check out the website. There's a bunch of champion builds on there, guides, tier lists. We even got a rune tier list on there now as well. So anyways, enough of me talking. Let's get into the tier list. First up is Baron lane. Now there's already some changes already to the Baron lane. So before we had, Camille up in the S plus tier, but not anymore. Camille got a few nerfs in this patch, a few big nerfs as well that hit her a lot in the early game. So Camille has moved down a tier and could honestly move down even more, but I think just because of how easy her kit is to use and how well her kit is as well, she can play in so many different situations. Her ultimate is still really strong. That's why I've kind of put her down in the S tier. But for the S plus tier, we still have Darius up there. Darius is still really strong, really good team fighting top laner or Baron laner, you could say. They could join in team fights, get resets. He's just really strong, has a lot of healing as well. A great way to win 1v1 battles. Can even win 1 versus 2 at times as well with his ultimate, his passive, his bleed effect. Everything about Darius is still really strong. And we have a new addition up in the Baron laner. We have Riven. Now, Riven has received a few buffs, not this patch, but a few patches ago, which has made her slowly stronger and stronger. And with other champions getting nerfed in the Baron lane, champions like Camille, champions like Irelia, champions like that as well, that receiving some buffs and nerfs everywhere, but Riven has just always received buffs, and she's getting stronger and stronger now. And I honestly think that she's one of the strongest Baron laners right now. She's not that hard to play as well. She's pretty easy to play. You just have to make sure you auto attack in between your abilities. And yeah, just her kit in general, really high mobility, really high burst damage. The items work really well with her at the moment as well. She can split push, she can also join team fights, she can flank quite well. She basically has everything. She has a huge massive shield that lasts a long amount of time as well, which I think they need to revert back to what it was before, because they increased the time that the shield can stay on her. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit busted in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, Riven I think is S plus tier right now, really strong. Set's still up there as well. Set's still really strong. With Hullbreaker, you can split push, you can just build a lot of AD with Set, so he does a lot of damage. His suplex as well is really good for engage and also disengaging at the same time. You can sometimes play Set in support role if you want to, but again, another champion that is really strong up in the Baron lane. Hard hitting, really annoying to deal with, has a lot of health regen, has the shielding as well, deals true damage. Again, another champion that has it all. Now, Renekton, some people were questioning Renekton in S plus tier in the previous tier list. The reason why I think Renekton is S plus tier is mainly because how strong he is really in the early game. In the early game, he's one of the strongest, if not the strongest Baron laner right now. He's really strong at just not engaging, skirmishing, I should say, and fighting the Baron laner and at early levels. And if you can get an early game lead with Renekton, he can be really strong. You have like 2 different types of builds. You can go Blade Rune King Renekton or Black Cleaver Renekton. Either one of them as the first item is really good. Just depends if you want to be tank or if you want to be squishy and be that deal a lot of damage with the Blade Rune King with your W passive. But I mean, the champion, it got a few buffs as well. I think he's honestly really strong. He's great in team fights as well. He's quite tanky when you use his ultimate. He's able to do quite a lot in the front line. He can also burst enemy champions really quickly with Blade Rune King and Black Cleaver because of his second ability. He has healing, everything as well. It's just great. Now, there's a few champions from the S tier that I honestly feel like I can move up into the S plus tier. But I haven't moved them up for many reasons. Let's first talk about Irelia. Irelia, I think, is a really strong champion right now. The only reason why she's in S tier is because she's quite difficult to play and quite difficult to master. The reason why Irelia is so strong right now is because she can get a lot of resets and she can dash around a lot with her first ability. If you don't understand how her mechanics work and how to get the resets for your first ability, then she's not as good as other Baron laners. Like I said, you have to make sure you land you know, the stuns from the second ability. You have to make sure you land the third ability. You have to make sure you land the ultimate, make sure you use your second ability at the right time, and make sure you use your first ability to the right target as well, because sometimes, you know, when you keep pressing the first ability, it's not going to go to the champion that you want to. So most of the time you have to manually aim the first ability, which makes her even more difficult to play. So that's the reason, in my opinion, why she's not up in the S+ tier. But like I said, she's still really, really strong. Great split pushing, great team fighting as well, which, to be fair, most of these Baron laners are. Another one is Jace. Now, Jace, again, can move up into S+ tier. I think that Jace kind of struggles a little bit against these, you know, Divine Sunderer, Bruiser tank users. Jace... I mean, he's still really good at the end of the day. You know, you can all in with your melee form. You've got a range form as well that you can use to poke quite a lot. But most of the time he can struggle a little bit, you know, against the likes of, you know, Darius if he gets pulled in, or Set, or even Renekton, Riven. You know, these champions can definitely punish Jace in difficult situations. But, you know, Irelia and Jace, I think, could definitely move up into the S+ tier. Another thing to mention as well, even though I've got like Conqueror on quite a few of these champions, I might change some of them to Lethal Temper now because of the recent nerfs, but most of them still use Conqueror completely fine. Speaking of tanky champions, Garen is still really strong. He's just a big beefy frontliner. He still does a bucket load of damage. He's pretty stupid, really, really easy to play. That's why he's up in the S tier. Sometimes he could be really easy to kite, really easy to counter, but because of how easy he is, because how much damage he still does and how tanky he is, that's why he's up in the S tier. Wukong as well, he's a bit more of a tanky Baron laner now than really doing a lot of damage. You go Black Cleaver, Divine Sunderer, then you can go for a little bit of tank as well with Grasping Undying. You can proc it really easily with Divine Sunderer and your first ability for healing. He does a lot of healing during team fights. I think he's one of the best team fight Baron laners as well with Darius because of his ultimate. He can roam quite easily. He's got like a little clone as well, which can confuse quite a few people. He's got a lot of mobility, and he is still really, really strong. Now, Fiora got a buff this patch. Fiora got a, if I'm not mistaken, a health buff, and also the lunge damage also got buffed. I think the problem with Fiora now is that ever since they nerfed the range of her lunge, she's definitely been struggling quite a bit. She finds it really difficult now to get on these long range carries in the back line, which at the moment, that's the current meta, are these long range carries like Jinx, like Caitlyn, like Zyra as well, and they just auto attack from range with Lethal Tempo with the enchanters as well. And Fiora finds it really, really difficult to try and get onto them right now because of that long range nerf. On top of that, it's just in general, Fiora does struggle against long range champions. She does really well against melees and bruisers. So if you're against a lot of melee champions, a lot of bruisers, then Fiora is still, you know, completely fine. But I don't think she's S+ tier. Shen, I think, is really strong as well. You know, most of the time Shen just split pushes in the side lane, uses ultimate, boom, he gets into the team fight really, really easily. That's pretty much Shen at the moment. He's, you know, he's one of them champions that can be really annoying to deal with because he can split push in the side lane, but then he can also ultimate into the team fight, get a big massive shield, and then woo, he's in the team fight. He taunts 3 or 4 people, he wins the team fight for your team. He also has his second ability as well that can basically stop AD carries from dealing any damage to him at all. On to A+. I've moved Gragas down just because Gragas is, in my opinion, struggling a little bit more in the Baron lane at the moment because of the current meta. I think, you know, even though with Gragas you can play a little bit safe, it's hard to burst down these bruisers because there's so much healing right now in the game, and there's so many champions that have a lot of mobility to get away, you know, like Riven, Renekton, Irelia can dash away, Camille can dash away. So Gragas does find it hard, but he still is a really, really strong champion in the Baron lane, in my opinion. I think he's definitely up there as you know, probably one of the best AP Baron laners with Akali as well. But yeah, I think he just, it's difficult to play him sometimes against some of the bruisers. Against tanks he's completely fine, but against the bruisers that can skirmish a lot better, then it's quite difficult. Olaf, I actually played against Olaf in the Baron lane. It was actually quite disgusting, to be fair. I was playing some Dr. Mundo for my A to Z guide, which will be coming out very, very soon. The next A to Z guide champion, which is Dr. Mundo. Play against Olaf. This champion is still disgusting. you know, even with the Q nerfs, you'll see my jungle tier list. I've still left him in the S+ tier. I could probably move Olaf up into S, to be honest, with the Baron tier list, because his third ability still does a stupid amount of damage. You know, the slow from the first ability and the damage from the first ability, in my opinion, wasn't a problem. It's still his third ability that's the main problem. That ability being AoE and dealing so much damage at level 1 is just absolutely disgusting. It allows him to, you know, clear the jungle quicker, which I'll talk about in a second, but also allows him to trade really easily in the Baron lane as well. You can just walk up, use your third ability, boom, you know, 10% of your HP is gone already. So I definitely think I can move Olaf into S tier, and I probably will, to be fair, after this video. Pantheon, again, you know, very early game centric champion, has to try and get an early lead, or he's just going to get outscaled by a lot of other Baron laners, because they just get a lot stronger than Pantheon in the late game. You have to use your ultimate to full effect to be able to try and roam around, get into team fights as well. You can split push at the same time, but with Pantheon it is a little bit difficult. These are like above average champions at the moment. Graves as well. Graves is still really good in the Baron lane. I think he's still better in the jungle, even though his jungle did get nerfed. I still think he's better in the jungle. But he's still strong in the Baron lane as well. He does well against these bruisers, especially these melee champions, because Graves is a ranged champion. He has his dash as well, so he can easily kite these bruisers, easily stack his Conqueror, and he can just do a lot of damage afterwards. So Graves still really, really strong. Jax as well in the Baron lane. Maybe not as strong as the jungle, but he can still make it work in the Baron lane. It's just that Jax finds it quite difficult to scale up, finds it quite difficult against these bruisers, because Jax needs a few items before he can really get online. If he falls behind in the early game, then he just becomes really, really weak, and you need to wait until you get 3 or 4 items, which if you're behind in the early game can take quite a long time. Excuse me. Malphite with Iceborne Gauntlet, the new Iceborne Gauntlet, I think actually might be really, really strong right now. I think Malphite, with the stacking armor that you get and the damage that you get from Iceborne Gauntlet as well, because of his ultimate at the same time, you have the huge massive stone field, you can deal a lot of damage now. Honestly think Iceborne Gauntlet Malphite is honestly pretty strong, and I think that Malphite might actually be a fairly decent tank. The problem is at the moment is that tanks find it really difficult in the meta because of Divine Sunderer and how strong Divine Sunderer is. If you don't know, Divine Sunderer does more damage to champions that are basically tanks. And in my opinion, you know, Shen, Wukong, and Garen are just better tanks than Malphite. But if you want to give it a try, Iceborne Gauntlet Malphite is pretty good. Akali as well, just a very difficult champion to play. I can honestly move Akali up into S tier as well, because Akali is pretty strong. But again, it's the same situation where Akali is quite difficult to play. She is very weak in the early game, so you need to understand kind of her limits, really, in my opinion. And then when it gets to team fights as well, you have to make sure you use your combo and you use your auto attacks in between to full effect. But again, another champion that could definitely move up into S tier. Onto A, Kennen is still Kennen. Nothing's really changed with Kennen. Kennen's still pretty good in team fights. If you can get a huge massive team fight with Kennen. I've seen a few Kennens pop off here and there, but nothing too crazy with Kennen. Again, if Kennen gets dove on by any of these bruisers, finds it really, really difficult, even though he has the third ability, Lightning Rush, I think it's called, that can just give him a bunch of movement speed to get away to safety. But other than that, it's quite difficult. Singed in the Baron lane, I think Singed mid lane is just a lot better than Baron lane, because Singed mid lane, you find it a lot easier to just walk up and clear waves, because most of the time you'll be against assassins or mages, which don't have a lot of early game kill threat. But however, in the Baron lane, you have a lot of early game kill threat champions that can definitely kill, Darius, Renekton, Set, all these champions can kill Singed in the early game, which means that you can't walk up as easily and as freely to clear the wave and roam around. And also mid lane's a lot easier lane as well to roam around. Dr. Mundo, the guide I'm doing at the moment for the A to Z guide, he's not as strong as the other tanks. Malphite's better, Shen, Wukong, Garen's better. I think it's just the meta as well, because Mundo does really well against AP champions because of all the healing he does. Obviously, AP champions do a lot of burst damage, but with AD champions, they do a lot of consistent damage, which means that Mundo can't heal up as much. And also, Executioner's Calling and Oblivion Orb are common items that everyone build right now, so the healing of Dr. Mundo is already reduced from all of that. So he does find it quite difficult. Jarvan, I'm not too sure why the rune is not showing up there. A little bit interesting, but I'm pretty sure it's Conqueror. Yeah, Jarvan in Baron lane doesn't get used that much anymore. Pretty much just gets used as an ulti bot really in the top lane. Just farm up, get into team fights, use the ultimate, boom, happy days. I mean, he doesn't get used that much in a Baron lane anymore. To be honest, I could probably remove him from the Baron lane because I don't really see him a lot. But I just keep him there just in case people want to give him a try. You know, it can work, but he just struggles against a lot of the other bruisers. And Nasus as well, you know, even though I feel like Nasus can be really, really strong, you know, with Divine Sunder, Hole Breaker, Split Push, Nasus stacking up. The problem is that he's just really, really easy to deal with, and he can get punished quite easily in the early game. He is quite strong. He is very easy to play. So if you do want to pick up a Baron laner, then Nasus is probably going to be a decent Baron laner to pick up. But he does struggle in team fights quite a lot. And most of the time you want to split push, which obviously as a team, you don't really want to do. Moving on to B tier. First up, Kale. I honestly think Kale could definitely move up. I feel like Kale, when she gets to, you know, 3 or 4 items now, when she gets to level 13, especially with lethal tempo, your damage output is absolutely crazy right now with Kale. Again, the real struggle with her is the early game, and I mean it's a big struggle in the early game. She's one of, if not the weakest early game champions in the entire game right now. You have to play very passive. It is quite boring at times, and I still think it's very hard to get to level 13 without falling so far behind that you're just going to lose the game anyway. So there's some situations where, like, you know, you're in the early game, you're playing really passive, you're scaling up really well, your team's not dying either, and then you just become unkillable when you're at 3 or 4 items because you do a shit ton of damage. But it's just getting to that point, which is the difficult part. And kind of same with Tryndamere as well, you know, kind of same thing as what I said with Kale. You know, early game, very difficult, but if you could scale, if you can get 3 or 4 items, Tryndamere can just run into the back line, just basically be unstoppable. And then Teemo's Teemo. You know, Teemo just put shrooms down, hope for the best. If he doesn't get anything with the Teemo shrooms, then he just doesn't really do anything. I mean, I still haven't unlocked Teemo. I think, pretty sure I have 20,000 blue mots, and I haven't unlocked Teemo. That's just all you need to say about Teemo. But yeah, not that great. Not that great at all, unfortunately. Right, onto the jungle. I'm going to scroll this down a little bit to make sure we don't miss out Dr. Mundo and Amumu down in the bottom. Right, jungle. Right, S+ tier. Same champions as last patch. Nothing's really changed with the S+ tier. Lee Sin and Kha'Zix still really good for different reasons. Lee Sin for his early game jungle clears, early game presence in terms of ganks are really strong. He's very mobile. He can set up team fights really well. He's just really strong overall. Kha'Zix is different. He's a bit more of a scaling jungler. You want to get, you know, his 3 evolves when you get up to level 13. You want to scale up, but he's still one of the fastest jungle clearers in the entire game right now. He clears jungle really fast, especially when you get to level 6. You get the evolved spikes, the first ability. Not evolved spikes, that's the second ability. Evolved claw, whatever it is. Basically his first ability where he gets like an auto attack reset. If you get that, you can clear the jungle really quickly. You can just keep farming around and do quite a lot. He is quite strong. And Olaf as well. As I mentioned briefly in the Baron lane, Olaf is still really strong in the jungle. He clears the jungle really well. He can just farm up really easily, get a few items, and he just basically becomes unkillable. And does a lot of damage with his third ability. But yeah, Kha'Zix, really strong assassin. Olaf, really strong bruiser, and then Lee Sin is really strong in the early game. So yeah, 3 very different champions in the S+ tier, depending on what sort of style you want to play. You know, you want to play early aggressive champion, you want to play late game scaling champion like Olaf, or do you want to play an assassin like Kha'Zix? So pretty cool. You've got 3 different champions there to play. Onto the S tier. First up, I actually want to talk about Echo. I'll probably talk a little bit more in the mid lane, but Echo in the jungle definitely got a buff this patch. The first ability now does 150% damage to monsters, which allows his jungle clear to be absolutely insane. His second ability got buffed as well. His base armor and base health also got buffed, which helps him in the jungle. So honestly, I think Echo is a really strong jungler right now. Obviously, he's still more of a late game scaling jungler, and his early game is not that strong, especially because he's an AP jungler as well, and he can get punished quite easily in the early game. But now, because he has that extra bit of damage from the to the jungle camps, he's also a little bit more healthier as well, which means he can clear the jungle quite easier, and he can scale up to the mid and late game a little bit easier than before. And I feel like he's definitely in a very strong spot. Moving on, Jax I already briefly spoke about in the Baron lane. Still really strong when you get 3 or 4 items. A very good scaling jungler. Jax finds it a lot easier than in the jungle than in the Baron lane, because in the jungle he can scale up, he can farm up very easily. He can get a few items before he needs to get to the team fights, especially because the first dragon doesn't spawn until 5 minutes. So most of the time you'll get your first item before that first dragon, so you can look to try and get into team fights, even though that's not really Jax's strongest point, but it allows you to just be a little bit stronger. Irelia, again, I can move into S+ tier, but the same reason with Baron lane and Irelia is the same reason why I put Irelia in S tier here. Same situation. Again, just quite difficult to play, but it's still really strong in the jungle. Even though she did get nerfs to her jungle clear, I still think she's really strong in the jungle because you can get resets on your first ability. You can deal a lot of damage in the jungle, and you can stay very, very healthy at the same time. Vi, still exactly the same. You know, you can clear jungle very fast. You have a lot of shielding as well for the jungle, so you can stay very healthy. You can basically full clear your jungle, get level 5, go to a lane, use your ultimate. Really, really impactful. Really, really strong jungler. Xin Zhao, one of the strongest early game skirmish junglers, sorry, in the entire game, and also his late game is very, very strong because of his ultimate. And again, like I said before, is at the moment there's a lot of long range carries, especially AD carries at the moment. There's not really a lot of short range carries, so most of the time them long range carries find it very difficult to get onto Xin Zhao when he has his ultimate up. And obviously his ultimate means that any attacks outside of the radius of the ultimate, he doesn't take any damage at all. So he can be a big frontline tank. He can still do a lot of damage as well with the Divine Sunderer Black Cleaver. He clears the jungle very easily as well. Just overall an insane jungler to play. Morgana, fastest jungler here at the moment in the entire game. Again, another jungler that can maybe move up into S+ tier, but again, it's just knowing how to play Morgana jungle as well, because Morgana is very, very different to other junglers. You have the fastest jungle clear out of any champion in the entire game, but you need to do it correctly. You know, you need to do what is it, Grump and Blue at the same time. You also need to do Wolves and Red buff at the same time. So there's loads of ways that Morgana can clear the jungle the fastest, but you need to know how to do it. And obviously the playstyle of Morgana is very, very different to any other jungler in the entire game, because you're not really about being, you know, that frontline bruiser like Vi, Xin Zhao. You're still on the backline. You're still playing that backliner, but as a jungler, obviously because of Black Shields, the roots. You can still play in the frontline with the ultimate if you have Zhonya's available or Stasis available, but most of the time it's going to be on the backline. Nunu, really good tank. Did get a bit of a buff this patch as well. Still stays in the S tier for me. I feel like as a jungler, Nunu is good. You know, it's not bad. But unfortunately, just not as strong as the other junglers, because Nunu's just more of a tank. Obviously, tanks don't really do well in the current meta at the moment, but he can still gank really quickly because of his snowball. He can still go around. He can still secure objectives very, very well. He has a lot of crowd control and a lot of zoning control as well with Nunu, so I still think he's really good. Riven, as I mentioned, in the Baron lane, really strong right now in the current meta. I feel like in the jungle she could be really strong as well because of all her mobility, because of that shield duration buff that she got as well a few patches ago, which means that she can stay a little bit healthier in the jungle. And because of her passive, she could do a lot of damage to the jungle camps as well. You know, using ability, auto attack, ability, auto attack. You know, keep on getting the resets with the auto attacks and the abilities. Gragas in the jungle, I think, has a much better time than Gragas in the Baron lane, because Gragas in jungle, you want to farm up a little bit, get a few items, and then try and one-shot the carries. In the Baron lane, that is a little bit more difficult to do because you are a bruiser. You're against bruisers, sorry. And also, you don't really have a lot of free time to farm up as much as possible. So yeah, Gragas in the Baron Dragon lane in the jungle is still fine. Yeah, and you can one-shot carries quite easily. Graves, even after nerf, is still good as well. You know, full crit Graves, Black Cleaver Graves, anything works completely fine. Just because bruisers find it so difficult to get onto Graves sometimes, because he has his resets from his third ability, which allows him to dash and auto-attack reset, basically. You also have like Protobot in the game as well, which allows him to get another dash. So yeah, still quite a good jungler. Evelynn, even after the Vision Wars being added to the game, or the Control Wards being added to the game, people are still finding success with Evelynn. I feel like Evelynn is still a really strong champion if you can work around the Vision, if you make sure that you clear the Vision before you get into gank, so the, you know, the laners don't know you're there, then you're in a really, really strong spot with Evelynn, because she has constant invisibility, she can roam around the map with ease, and to be honest, some teams don't even buy any vision, like Control Wards at all against Evelynn, which blows my mind, to be fair. I mean, if you're against Evelynn, you need to make sure you buy Control Wards and use them in the river, so you can see Evelynn rotating around the map even when she's invisible. So that's really important. But Evelynn's still really strong. If you can get early game lead with Evelynn, she's still really, really good. Fiora buffs definitely help her a lot more in the jungle. Her lunge damage and also her health buff allows her to be a little bit more tanky, and also deal a lot more damage to jungle camps, because your first ability is something you're going to be spamming a lot in the jungle, so it just helps her out a little bit with that. But again, another champion that, you know, scales quite well into the mid and late game, still really, really strong. And yeah, still really, really good, to be fair. Wow, I feel like my voice is going already, and I'm only on jungle. Echo I already spoke about, and the Jarvan as well. You know, Jarvan, early game jungler, very, very aggressive jungler. His ultimate is very strong. Just make sure you don't pick him against any champions that have any sort of dashes or anything like that. Other than that, he's still really, really strong, still really good. Above average, A+ tier. You can see that most of these champions are all like S and A+ tier, to be fair. So you can play anyone really. Same with Baron Lane as well. A+ tier, Rengar. After his nerf, he hasn't been played that much. He definitely does struggle a lot more now in the jungle because of his clear. Not being able to clear as hard because of his, he got like 6 AD nerf or something like that. So it's pretty mental. So yeah, jungle clear not that good, and yeah, it's a little bit difficult to play, but he can still one-shot carries. I mean, that's the most important thing with Rengar. You know, if you can farm in the early game, you can still one-shot carries. You can still be really, really strong. Wukong in the jungle is not as strong as Baron Lane. You can still make it work in jungle because as a jungler, you always want to group up for objectives, and Wukong's one of the best champions right now to group up for objectives because of his ultimate. So you can still make it work, but you're just going to clear the jungle very, very slowly because they nerfed quite a lot with Echo. Sorry, not Echo. With Wukong jungle. Like you can't heal off jungle camps, you don't deal as much damage, etc, etc. So I just had to have a drink. Too much talking. Right, Pantheon, same with Baron Lane. Very early aggressive jungler. You need to try and get an early advantage if you can with your ultimate. His jungle clear is like okay, it's not the best. It's like an okay-ish clear. But again, all about the early game again. And Jace as well. Jace is pretty good in the jungle, still clears quite quickly. Again, you have to kind of know his combos. Like if you're on range form, use your second ability to gain attack speed. You can then go to melee form after that, and your next 3 auto attacks in melee form does more damage instead of your range attack. So little things like that which will let you clear the jungle a lot quicker. Little few tips like that. But again, for like a standard player, he's like okay, he's not really the best. And then Camille as well, obviously again with the recent nerfs, means that she's not going to be able to clear jungle as quickly now. She definitely, you know, feels a lot weaker. I've played against her quite a bit. I've seen her quite a few times as well on other streams and everything. She definitely looks weaker, and she definitely feels weaker as well. Not as strong as before in the jungle. I think she can still work in the Baron lane, but in the jungle I think she is she's not as strong as what she was before. Trendamir, Master Yi. There's not really much to say about all of these champions. You know, Trendamir, Master Yi. Trendamir I spoke about a little bit about being late game scaling. Same with Master Yi as well. You know, there was a point that excuse me. There was a point that Master Yi got these buffs. He became broken, but now he's back to where he belongs. Basically, he's back to where he belongs after his nerfs. More of a scaling champion. Doesn't really do that much damage to the jungle. It's pretty meh. It's mossy things. Same with Trendamir as well. Late game scaling. Does probably find it easier in the jungle. Same with Master Yi as well, again, because you can farm and you can play a lot more safer. Because in Wild Rift, there's not really a lot of invades, which means that these junglers that scale into the late game, Jax, Irelia, Master Yi, Trendamir, all these champions that scale quite well into the late game, you can play in the jungle because you're not going to be worried about getting invaded or anything like that. I mean, if there is an invade, it's very, very rare you'll find an invade in Wild Rift. Because in Wild Rift, there's a very short window at the start of the game where you can invade. And if the invade goes wrong, then it's horrible. It really is horrible. That's just because how quickly it goes from the start of the game to your first boss spawning to the minions being in your lane. It's just too much small of a window to try and invade. And again, kind of the same as the game goes on as well. It's really hard to invade because you can roam around the map so easily. So your mid lane, the mid lane can red up really easily, the Baron lane or bot lane, etc, etc. So yeah, that's why these scaling junglers are pretty good. Rammus is just Rammus, rolls around, tries to do his best. It's kind of annoying at times, to be fair. If you're against full AD comps, then Rammus is the best way to go. I see people building recommended Rammus all the time. I think I mentioned this in my previous video. It really annoys me. They go like Thormail, Wit's End, even though against a full AD team, they go Wit's End, really annoying. Shyvana's kind of meh as well. Shyvana's just Shyvana. Dr. Mundo doesn't get played the jungle anymore since the rework, because he's not that strong anymore, because he doesn't clear the jungle as fast, and because his kit doesn't really evolve around jungle. It's more of a Baron laner now, and Amumu's just a Mumu. You know, Amumu can work, but most of the time he's pretty trash. Pretty trash. Onto the mid lane. So the mid lane's kind of the same, basically. I moved a few champions here and there. It's basically the same as what it was before. Dyna and Karma, in my opinion, are still both S+ tier. Again, there's more champions that I could probably move up into S+ tier. Irelia to mention, Yasuo as well, and also Katarina. But again, it's what I say in terms of, like, you know, ease of playing or ease of access. Actually, it's not really ease of access. It's just how easy the champions are to play. Which, you know, with, you know, champions like Irelia, Katarina, and Yasuo, even though they're really strong right now, they're still quite difficult to play. So Dyna, still really strong, great team fight champion. You know, if you can get the reset switch for first and your third ability, then happy days. If not, then she can still dash forward, use all her abilities, do a lot of damage during team fights. Very easy, very safe to play in the mid lane as well. Still really strong champion that does a lot of damage. Same with Karma as well. I feel like Karma mid lane is still completely fine. She's maybe not as strong as what she was before in the mid lane, but I still think mid lane Karma can work, especially in solo queue. Especially, sorry, in duo or trio queue. Because if you're in duo or trio queue, you can go like full AP Karma in the mid lane if you want to, or you can go for like a more support style mid lane Karma build, and then you can go towards like building Staff, Arden, and then buff the rest of your team. But even if you go full AP, your shields are still really strong, and your damage is also very strong. I've spoken about twice already about how hard she is to play and everything. She's still strong now in the mid lane. She finds it a lot easier in the mid lane than the Baron lane, because there's all these assassins like Katarina, Zed, and also all the mages like Twisted Fate, Ziggs, Orianna, and Ahri that she can punish a lot in the early game. So I really definitely finds it a lot easier in the mid lane. Katarina, reset galore, champion is so annoying sometimes. Honestly, you get a triple kill with Katarina in your early game, you can just carry the game. That's what happens most of the time in high elo. Maybe in low elo it's a little bit different, but in high elo, if Katarina gets like 3 or 4 kills, the game's just over in the early game. So it's quite difficult, but when you play against Katarina, as long as you have a lot of crowd control, then you'll be completely fine. You won't have a problem at all. Because then every time she ultimates, you just use your crowd control, and then she doesn't really do that much damage. But yeah, she is quite difficult to play because you need to combo her abilities to make sure you get the resets with the second ability, so you can pick up daggers, get resets with jumps and everything as well. So again, she's quite difficult to play. That's why she hasn't been moved up into the S+ tier. Zed finds it quite difficult at the moment in the current meta. I still think he's S tier. I still think he is really strong. But because the bruisers are very tanky right now, they're building Death's Dance. Even though Zed does build a lot of armor penetration, Zed can find it a little bit difficult. And especially because carries right now have a lot of enchanters and shields, it's still quite difficult. There's a lot of healing and shielding with enchanters right now, so Zed finds it difficult to burst down one champion, but he still is really strong. He still is really good to play. I still recommend picking him up. Twisted Fate, more mage related mid laner, can definitely roam around quite a lot with his ultimates. Try and make plays in the side lanes more than the mid lane itself, because of his ultimate is just really strong. You could turn a fight within an instant with your ultimate. You could roam around the map a lot quicker. You can, invade the jungle if you really want to. And even his ultimate is really good for vision. If you feel like, I don't know, the enemy team's starting Baron, for example, use your ultimate, see if they're starting Baron, and then they'll realize that they're seen because the icon above their head, and then they're going to start to hesitate a little bit and maybe back off from Baron. So really good utility mid laner that's used to like help the rest of his lanes. Ziggs in the mid lane still does a lot of damage, still is really strong. Yeah, Ziggs is still Ziggs. Throws bombs, does a lot of damage, a lot of range as well, and is just crazy strong. So yeah, still pretty good, and still probably does the most damage in the entire game every single game as well, because Ziggs just sits back, throws bombs, and just deals a lot of damage. So pretty easy to play as well. Probably easiest mid laner. One of the easiest mid laners to play. You just have to keep your distance and you'll be fine. Galio, actually, I'm not really too sure. Galio can maybe move down into A+. I'm not really too sure. I've seen a few Galios, and like the taunt nerf is not that bad, but I can see why people say that it's made him a lot worse. We'll have to see how he gets played, in competitive as well, because he was one of the strongest picks in competitive. But I feel like, he still does a lot of damage. He still offers that global presence, which is really strong in solo queue and also in competitive. So I still think overall he's still a strong champion. And also his AP ratio has been buffed, which means that mid lane Galio is a little bit stronger. Yasuo, again, as I mentioned, difficult to play, but is a very strong champion right now. To be honest, lethal tempo is probably better on Yasuo now than Conqueror. I still need to update all the builds for this patch, so bear with me for that. But yeah, still is really strong, can dash around, knock up people. If you have people on your team that can enable you, like Rakan and Malphite, happy days, makes it even better. If you play Yasuo by himself with no knockups around you, it can be a little bit more difficult. Ahri and Orianna as well, both control mages in the mid lane, both late, I say late game. Orianna's more of a late game scaling mid laner. Doesn't really do too much in the early game, but as you scale up, as you use your ultimate during team fights, she does a stupid amount of damage. So yeah, she is pretty strong. Ahri is more of a, I would say, mid and early game champion because you can roam around quite easily with your ultimate. You can use your charm, and your charm is really effective in the early game and the mid game. You can use that and then the rest of your team can follow up and deal quite a lot of damage. But Orianna is more of like a late game. You can't really do that much in the early game, but they're both like control mages. So if you like control mages, probably the best two to pick up. And then Echo as well. I explained it briefly in the jungle role, with the health buff, with the AP ratio buff on E, the second ability buff, first ability didn't get buffed at all in lane phase because it was just minions or monsters, sorry. But it was more to do with the base health and the base armor, which makes him really strong now in the mid lane, because in the early game he found it really difficult, but now he is a lot stronger. Moving on to the above average tier, the A+ tier. You can see I put Singed in here now, so everyone can stop complaining about me putting Singed mid lane and everything, because he's there now. Ooh, happy days, he's there. Yeah, he's there now. Happy days. Nothing to worry about anymore. Everything is okay. Nothing to worry about, but you're all good. Singed is there. Yeah, I think Singed is good in mid lane. He's still good with fleet footwork. He's really annoying to deal with if you're against the Singed. He's pretty strong. I do like to play him, to be fair. He's pretty good. Yeah, you can just roam around really easily, use your poison, clear the way. Is really good. Akali, again, the same reason with Baron lane, does find it quite difficult in the mid lane. Probably is a bit easier in the mid lane than the Baron lane, to be honest with you. But mid lane Akali's still fine. Mid lane Akali's still fine. You scale well, you do really well, and he's a really good champion. The 3 AD carries are still really good in mid lane as well. Lucian, Akshan, and Corki. All of them are kind of the same thing. Akshan, well, Akshan's not really an AD carry. Akshan's more of a mid laner than an AD carry, because you can use the 1v1 situations to full effect, get the shield, get your resets off on your third ability, and obviously Akshan with his ultimate, his passive on his second ability is just way too strong. Because you can revive all your teammates as well. But Lucian and Corki still work fine in the mid lane. Both of them kind of have the same, I say same-ish effect. Lucian's more of like early game. You want to try and get a lead with Lucian in the early game, with how much burst damage he does, especially with Kraken staying now. Corki's more mid to late game scaling. You can go like full crit Ezreal if you want, full crit Corki if you want to, which could do a lot of damage in the mid game, but again, it's more of like a late game champion. Morgana's not as strong in the lane anymore. In mid lane, Morgana is not as strong as in the jungle, because they nerfed her laning phase quite a lot with a nerf to her second ability, if I'm not mistaken. So she doesn't clear waves as quickly as before. She's a lot more effective in the jungle, but she's really easy to play and she's quite good during team fights. That's why I still put her in the A+ tier. Fizz can kind of get countered the same as Zed with one button with Zhonya's. I forgot to mention that with Zed actually. The Zed can be countered by stasis. Same with Fizz as well, can be countered by stasis. And if you use your third ability too early, then you don't have any more mobility really. So Fizz can definitely get caught out quite a lot. But it's still really fun to play, still really good to play in the mid lane. You can still one-shot enemy carries at level 5 as well. When you hit level 5, you chum the waters, dash in, and most of the time you'll get a kill, especially with electrocute. Veigar received a buff this patch. I think the problem with Veigar is that Veigar just still takes too long to scale up. I moved him up in this tier list. I moved him up to A+ because I think the buffs that he's getting are very good for him. But I think the problem is that he still takes too long to scale up. Whereas at the point of when he's strong, it's sometimes too late for that. Kind of like KO in the end, or in a way, sorry. Is that Veigar just takes way too long to scale up, doesn't do that well in the mid and early game, and it's quite difficult to play when he is in the early game, mid game. But in the late game, you know, if you use your cage, if you catch someone out, then you can just one-shot someone with all your abilities. So that's kind of the fun part about Veigar, really, and kind of the strong part about Veigar. So again, yeah, it's just getting to that point, which is quite difficult. And as a mage as well, especially against, you know, assassins and bruisers in the mid lane, you can find it quite difficult. Jace as well in the mid lane, still completely fine. Jace mid is probably better than Jace Baron lane at the moment, I would say. But again, because of certain matchups into mages, you can use your ranger to full effect. And when you go into melee form as well, you can jump in and do a lot of damage. Probably better mid laner than Baron laner right now. Yeah, just does really make full effect of the new strong items and runes as well. And then Gragas in the mid lane, kind of same with the jungle. Has a lot of the easier time. Baron lane, he finds it quite difficult, but mid lane, he finds it quite easier to play against these mages and assassins because he can use his second ability to reduce damage and also heal up. And he also has a dash to get away to safety. And he also can just farm a lot easier in the mid lane because most of the time in the mid lane, all these champions don't really have any early game, you know, aggressive. I mean, it depends on matchup, but most of the champions here don't really have early game presence and early game kill pressure like Baron lane champions do. But you know, if you're against the Irelia, then it's quite difficult to play Gragas, even though you can cancel a Q with your E, but that's quite difficult to do. Aurelion Sol, still just quite a meh champion. You know, even though Rylai's got buffed and everything, he's still a meh champion. Doesn't do anything at all. Roams around quite a lot, does well, but other than that, pretty meh. Brand as well, doesn't really do too much in the mid lane. Again, a pretty meh champion. Yeah, again, it just finds it quite difficult to scale up. And to be fair, in team fights with his ultimate, with his bounces, it's just like, okay, you cool, I can do that. But it just doesn't really mean too much. And then Aurelion Sol is just Aurelion Sol. Yeah, just you can roam around, you can do some stuff, but that's about it. B tier is just all the other mages that I don't think are that good. Seraphine and Lux can work the same. I mean, to be fair, all of these mid lane mages can work. I've seen mid lane Lux work, I've seen mid lane Seraphine work, I've seen mid lane Annie work. But it's again that situation where it's just really hard sometimes to actually make them work. They're all quite easy to play as well. So if you do want mid laners, then it's probably not bad to pick them up. But you know, in just this tier list in general, they're just not as good as the other champions above. And KO moved up from C tier up to B tier. Maybe can move her higher, maybe up into A tier. Because KO, again, the same situation as Baron lane, where KO, because she has the weakest early game, you want to play against champions that don't have a lot of early game kill pressure. So mid lane is, you know, really good for that because you're against mages, and against mages you can just sit back, let them wave clear, stay under tower, farm up. That's all you need to do. But against bruisers, you always have that threat of, oh, are they going to tower dive me? Are they going to do a lot of damage? Can I walk up? Because they're going to, you know, pull me in or something like that. So that's why KO has a little bit more fun time in the middle lane. Onto AD carries, onto duo lane. Not really much has changed with the duo lane. There are a few champions that I have moved around a little bit, which I'll explain in just a second. But S+ tier stays exactly the same. Kai'Sa, Xayah, Caitlyn, all the lethal tempo champions are just too strong right now. I mean, that's just how it is. Kai'Sa, because of, you know, her Q evolve is still really easy to get. Her E evolve is still really easy to get as well. Because you have lethal tempo, you can build more attack damage now. So your Caffeine Rain does more damage. You have your ultimate to be that assassin to jump in onto the backline if you need to. You have invisibility with your third ability, just very strong. Xayah as well with her self peel, and again with lethal tempo allows her to build more attack damage items, which means that she can be really strong at certain points during the game with all of her feathers, with her ultimate, which most of the time can save her ass. And also she has the pullback, she has the root as well, and again with lethal tempo she just does a lot of damage. Caitlyn with her long range is one of the best laning phase duo laners in the game right now. She punishes pretty much every other duo lane champion in the game because of her long range, because of her poke, her auto attacks. It's just absolutely insane how much damage Caitlyn can do in the early game, and to be honest, is probably the best, I would say, duo lane carry right now, especially with lethal tempo. Just because of her laning phase, you know, you can get so far ahead in laning phase that it's just so hard to kill, and she's really hard to kill because she has the longest range, so bruisers and assassins find it really difficult to jump on top of her, especially because of this whole, you know, assassin meta right now. No, because of the whole because of the whole enchanter meta. I don't know why I said assassins. The whole enchanter meta. You probably saw my YouTube short from yesterday where I got a pentakill with Caitlyn and Yumi, and we're basically in a 2 versus 5 situation. So pretty disgusting combo, pretty disgusting champions. Jinx as well, not as strong as the other AD carries in my opinion, because she takes quite a while to scale up and she does still need a few items to scale up. Same with Vayne as well, both more of like late game scaling champions. Jinx does have a safer time in laner phase than Vayne does, but Vayne has a stronger late game. But yeah, Jinx is still really strong though. You know, Storm Razor, IE, lethal tempo, absolutely insane damage that Jinx can do. I've got a video coming out soon for Jinx where we won a 4 versus 5 game where I went lethal tempo Jinx, so make sure you stay tuned to that. But still really good with her range. You know, rocket form plus lethal tempo, even though you basically burst all of your mana, it's so funny to watch, and it's so good as well. So yeah, keep an eye out for that video for Jinx lethal tempo. I will be releasing that soon. Vayne, as I mentioned, really struggles in the early game. Is very difficult to play as well, because you need to make sure you tumble in the right direction at the right time, because if you don't, and if you miss position once with Vayne, you're just going to get one shot. Laning phase is really difficult. You just need to scale up, get a few items first, and then you can go into team fights and do quite a lot. But again, it's difficult to get in that situation. Varus is still really good. You know, Poke Varus is still really good. But again, the meta at the moment is all to do with lethal tempo, enchanter supports, which Varus doesn't really work well with. You can try maybe AP on hit Varus. To be honest, it's not really that great. I still think lethality Varus is better. I still think his ultimate is really strong during team fights, but I just don't think that he's as strong anymore as what he was before. Draven, kind of the same with Vayne, is very difficult to play. You have to make sure you know, catch your axes. You have to make sure you know, go in the right direction at the wrong time. Do I pick up this axe? Do I walk forward to pick up this axe? Do I not? There's a lot of situations with Draven that you can definitely instant to do stupid decisions. But most of the time with Draven, it's one of them situations where it's just like, you know, he needs an early game lead. He needs to cash in on his passive, because if he doesn't, and if he doesn't get that early game lead, then he definitely falls off very quickly, and he's really easy to shut down, and he's really easy to just jump on top of, because he has no mobility or anything like that. Ezreal, I did a blue build Ezreal build. To be honest, it's pretty crap, to be fair. I still think Trinity Force Ezreal is better, but the good thing about Ezreal now is that he can scale a lot easier, because the first dragon is not until 5 minutes in the game, which means that by the time the second dragon comes up, most of the time you're going to have Trinity Force and Mana Moon Food upgraded, which before the times were kind of awkward, but now they're a lot better. And it means that you can stack a lot more in the laning phase. You can play a lot more passive, and he's just really good right now. I feel like he's definitely very strong. But again, he's a skill shot champion, so sometimes it's quite difficult to deal with the most damage, because you have to land all your abilities. On to A+, Tristana's still in A+ for the same reason as what I keep saying with Tristana. She's very good with lethal tempo. She's very strong. She definitely deserves S tier, but she's one of the hardest champions to play right now. You need to make sure you make full effect of her third ability, but it's really hard compared to PC League to try and use your third ability and auto attack the same champion over and over again and get the resets to jump around. Like, she's really difficult to play. Really hard. That's why she's in A+ tier, but she does have the potential to move up into S tier as well. Corki, the timing of package is a little bit weird now, because obviously the first dragon is not 4 minutes in the game, it's at 5 minutes, so the package time is a little bit meh. But you know, Corki's still really strong. He does still scale really well. The package is still really good during team fights. If you just keep your package in base until 5 minutes in the game, pick it up, then go back to base, he can still be really good. Just bear that in mind. Make sure you don't pick up your package straight away. But again, Crit Corki's still really good, and I definitely still recommend him for sure. Lucian, I did a video with Kraken Slayer. I honestly still think Conqueror is better for Lucian, but maybe you have to test Kraken Slayer more. Maybe you have to test Conqueror more as well, because of the recent nerf. So I'll have to see how that goes. But Lucian is still, you know, is still fairly strong, to be fair. You know, his early game's still really good. He still has a lot of mobility. The items still really work well for him. So it's one of those situations where it's just like, you know, he's good, but he's like, you know, there's just better champions that are better, really, isn't there? I mean, that's basically the bottom line of what I'm trying to say here. There's just better champions than what he is. Ashe, I've moved Ashe up. Oh my god, Ashe, I love Ashe. Ashe is amazing. I love Ashe. If you haven't seen already, I've been spamming Ashe at the moment. I think I have like a 70% win rate, maybe even higher than her with Ashe. Ashe, Mana Moon, Blade of the Ruined King, Storm Razor, Mortal Reminder. I mean, sometimes you don't even need to wear Blade of the Ruined King, but this build with Ashe is so good. I absolutely love it. I love this build with Ashe. It's so good. She's so fun to play. Her ultimate is really strong. And yeah, I think the addition to lethal tempo definitely helped Ashe a lot. Because you do a lot of damage now with your first ability in lethal tempo. On top of that, you have Blade of the Ruined King as well. And yeah, you'll be surprised how much damage you do with Ashe. Obviously, again, she's more of a utility-based champion, and she doesn't do as much damage as other champions in the game, but she's still pretty good. Jhin with Fleet Footwork. I still don't know if Fleet Footwork or Conqueror is better. It's a difficult situation to be in for Jhin, because Fleet Footwork did get nerfed, and Conqueror does feel pretty strong on him, but it's one of them situations where it's quite difficult. But yeah, Jhin, not as strong as what he used to be anymore, even though the addition of Storm Razor was pretty good for him, but the addition of Lethal Temper now means that Jhin has to unfortunately move down the tier list. In terms of AP champions in the dual lane, I still feel like Ziggs and Orianna are the best two dual lane champions to play in the bot lane. If you do want to play AP champions, they're both very strong. They both scale very well into the mid and late game. They both have really good wave clear, really good team fight tools. They both have good combos with engaged supports like Rakan as well, and Alistar. Overall, just the two best mage mid laners. You move on to A, you have the other mid lane mages being used in the dual lane. Karma's not that strong anymore in the dual lane. I mean, think she's okay, but she's just not as strong as what she was before. Morgana, again, her laning phase got nerfed, and Seraphine, if you land the ultimate, it's good. If you don't, you don't. It's kind of difficult. Akshan B tier. Again, he doesn't have the full effect of using his passive and his resets. Again, makes it quite difficult. Two other AP champions, Brand and Veigar. I don't think Veigar is that good really still in the dual lane. I have to test him out to see how he is, but yeah, I don't think he's as good as before. And then Misfortune in dual lane is just not that great right now. I want to test out crit Misfortune, but I don't really know what build to go for. I'll have to see what to go with Misfortune. That's one of the things I've got. I want to do with Misfortune is try out the crit build, but I don't think it's that good. And then Senna, the reason why Senna's C tier is because this is farming Senna. Fasting Senna would probably be like here or here. But farming Senna, you don't want to farm with her. So it's pretty shit. On to the last one. Wow, this might reach the hour mark. On to the last video. On to the last video. Sorry. Last tier list. Let's look at the support tier list. Karma and Yuumi, two of the best enchanter supports. Two of the best supports right now in the entire game. The Karma nerfs that happened before were to her second ability. Second ability, was it? Was it second ability? No, it was first ability and also ultimate. But her shields are still really strong. That's what makes support Karma still really, really good, is her shields are crazy, crazy strong. Yeah, shields are really strong. She still has a lot of crowd control, and she's still great to play. Love her. Awesome. Yuumi as well. I ban her every single game. I ban Yuumi every single game. The way that Yuumi could just jump onto allies, heal them up so much, give them extra attack damage, attack speed, etc., etc., give them extra on-hit damage. It's completely disgusting. And her ultimate's really strong as well. You can go like full AP Yuumi if you want to be more of a carry, or you can go more support-oriented Yuumi build, like Starfall and Water and Ardent Sensor. Just stay in with carries. Keep using your heal. Keep jumping out when you can to get the shield as well, so you can jump back on your allies and get a shield. Yeah, these two champions are just disgusting right now in the current meta. Two other champions that are closely followed behind. Okay, so the way I put support, Karma and Yuumi S++, Thresh and Rakan S+, and then the rest is S. But I can't put like Thresh and Rakan the same tier as Yuumi and Karma. It's just really, really difficult to do that, because Thresh and Rakan, they're great in solo queue, don't get me wrong, they're great champions, but like enchanters right now are just way too strong, and Karma and Yuumi are by far the two best enchanters in the entire game. But Thresh, great solo queue champion still, has the engage, has the disengage, especially when you have an immobile carry next to you. Using your lantern to full effect to get them away to safety is really nice. You can be that playmaking support that you want to be. The same with Rakan as well. Great team fight, great champion to play. He does a lot of damage as well, especially in the early game with Electrocute when you're going full AP. Really, really great to play, and really, really fun champion to play as well. In terms of other enchanter supports, you know, Lulu, Nami, and Janna, I just don't think they're as strong as Karma and Yuumi. I think Lulu and Nami are still really, really strong. Again, I'd probably put them in maybe S+ tier, and then Karma and Yuumi still S++ tier. Again, it's quite difficult. I don't want to make too many tiers, because I really don't have really anyone in D tier, because D tier is like the worst of the worst. Actually, how many champions do I have in D tier? I think it's just Teemo, right? I don't have Teemo in D tier. Maybe I have to change that. I don't have Teemo in D tier. Anyway, but yeah, Yuumi and Nami are just, yeah, it's Not that great. Actually, no. What am I saying? Of course they're great. I mean, Yumi and Nami are still fine, but they're just not that great compared to Karma and Yumi. But they're both still really, really strong champions. Nami's great for team fighting, for engaging if you want to, or even disengaging with her healing. She has probably one of the strongest laning phases outside of Karma. She's really good. Yumi lose more of a scaling, I would say, support in a way, if you can call it scaling supports, where she just shields and heals a lot, uses her ultimate. She just stays at the back, uses her shields to just protect her team. She doesn't really do a lot in terms of playmaking compared to like Nami, for example. And Janna's more of a disengaged support. Isn't really that strong at the in the current meta, I would say. It's quite good against bruisers and assassins, but it's just like meh. Okay, I could probably move Janna down, to be fair. I don't think Janna's actually that good. I think Janna's like A+. I need to move a few things around, I think. I can't remember what the other champion was that I need to move, but I'll get back to that. But yeah, Janna's more of a disengaged support, doesn't really do that much, and is kind of, is still okay, still fine champion to play, but just not as strong. Alistar got a few buffs, doesn't make him broken. He got the healing on his passive, and also crowd control reduces the cooldown by 10 seconds to 8 seconds, and the W cooldown got reduced by like 0.5 seconds. Doesn't make him broken, still makes him really strong. He's still a great frontline tank, and he is still really, really good. On to the A+ tier, the above average champions. Morgana, I still think is quite good. I think the Black Shield is very important. I think the crowd control that she can offer, especially Morgana Caitlyn in the lane, is really good, because you can biding into trap and you can combo and just do a crap ton of damage. She can help with wave clear as well if you need it. You can go like 4 AP Morgana, you can go support Morgana. I think 4 AP Morgana is probably the best way to go, but we'll have to see about that. Leona, all about the crowd control, all about the engages with Leona, using the solar flare, engaging forward, making sure that you just pick enemies off guard. If you can't, then it's whatever. You can still bait. I mean, even if you miss solar flare, you could just, your ultimate solar flare, you could just use the this solar eclipse, the third ability. I'm trying to remember the name, but you still use the third ability afterwards to go in. I mean, she's all about engaging. You just want to go forward, you just want to engage, and yeah, if you're into that type of play style, then Leona is a great champion for you. Galio, since the nerfs, again, his taunt was one of the main reasons why he was so strong in support, with his ultimate as well. They've both been nerfed. I still think the taunt is really strong. I still think his ultimate is really strong. I still think he's above average, but he's just not as strong as what he was before. Braum is just completely fallen out of the meta. Braum is just completely fallen out of the meta now, because Braum struggles against pretty much every single enchanter in the game, because you don't have that hard engage like a Rakan, like a Thresh, like an Alistar. He's a very passive champion. He still can work in against some team comps, especially against poke team comps as well, but most of the time it's not really that great. Sender support is still pretty good. I still think Sender support is not that bad. Most people say that she's kind of meh, but I still think she's completely fine. Sorry, my throat's going now because I've been talking for so long. But yeah, Senna's still pretty good. You gotta love Senna. Senna's a great champion to play. More of like a secondary carry than a support, really. You can build a support style, but you can build her as a secondary carry if you want to. But most of the time you want to build her as like a supportive style. With like Divine Sunderer, Black Cleaver, that sort of thing. Even though that's not really support, it's still support in terms of Senna. Sona, very, very late game scaling champion. Honestly, with Sona, if you can get into the mid and late game without dying, without getting put under any pressure, then it's pretty crazy. So yeah, just make sure with Sona, you play really, really passive in the early game, and just make sure that you can just basically scale up into the mid and late game. Make sure you do that. Because if you don't, then it's a little bit difficult. Because then you just fall behind and your shields and heals are not really useless. But late game, if you keep spamming your abilities, she becomes so strong, especially because their shielding are buffed as well. Seraphine, if you land your ultimate, happy days. If you don't, you don't. You're screwed, basically. But she's still quite good. Her poke is really good. Her shielding's still really good. Even after the nerf as well, she's still quite a good champion. Then we move on to B tier, where Set and Shen just struggle a lot against enchanters right now. They're more of like a full engage support. It's kind of like Blitzcrank and a Mumu, but they're just better versions, in my opinion, than them two. Yeah, Shen and Set, you just want to engage, you just want to go in, use your taunts, use your face breaker, to make sure that you can engage. But again, at the moment, because so many good champions are ranged, ranged, range. Like, there's so many good range champions that these full engage supports like Set and Shen just find it difficult to get into that situation where you can actually look for an engage. You can actually go forward and catch an enemy off guard, which, you know, you can do sometimes, but you have to be really pissed though if you somehow get caught by a Shen and a Set. Yeah, most of the time they're not really going to work that well. Soraka, even after the buffs, I still don't think she's that strong. You literally get countered by Oblivion Orb and 800 gold from Executioner's Calling. You basically get nerfed from the start of the game. Actually, I say that early game Soraka is actually pretty good because the healing is quite disgusting. You can win early game early game skirmishes in the bot lane really easily. But as soon as they go back, they get Executioner's Calling. I don't think she's as strong as before. I still don't think she's that strong, even after the buffs. And Lux is like, you know, if you can one-shot champion, happy days. If you can't, you can't. Lux support doesn't really get played anymore. And Blitzcrank is just, if you land your hook, happy days. If you don't, you don't. He's really good at actually picking enemies off guard, if you can. If you can't pick enemies off guard, then it's kind of a bit of a difficult situation. And Amumu support is just a very niche, unique pick. I don't think he ever gets played. I think I can probably remove him from the tier list. Anyway, boom, we hit the hour mark. In 3, 2, 1, boom, we hit the hour mark. Wow, an hour-long video. I think it's the longest video I've done in a long time with a tier list. I just wanted to give you all the most in-depth tier list as I can with every single champion. Again, if you have any comments, make sure you leave them down in the comments. I do read all the comments as well. I do actually change things as well, depending on, you know, situations of what people say in the comments, in terms of builds, in terms of tier lists and everything as well. I do take everything seriously. I do take everything into consideration, and I pretty much reply to all the comments as well. So make sure you go down to the comment section, make sure you write down what your opinions are, you know, whether it's a good tier list, whether you think things should change around. I'm always open to opinions. I'm always open to kind of move my tier list around depending on other people's opinions as well. But yeah, that's everything. Thank you all for tuning into this tier list video. Hopefully you enjoyed this hour-long video. If you made it this far, I appreciate you. Be very surprised that most of you make it this far to the hour-long video. But yeah, as always, thank you for tuning into the video. I appreciate it. I will hope to see you all in the next Wild Rift video. Take care of yourselves. Have a great rest of the day. Peace.